Priests are basic but durable healer units, capable of healing their allies from up to 2 squares away. They can also defend themselves with a minor tornado spell. Imperial Mage's sole purpose is to use Blaze 2 to devastating effect. They are a huge threat to tightly grouped allies and should be destroyed quickly before they have the chance to bring their powers to bear on your characters. Destonian soldiers are generic halberd-wielding infantry units, capable of dealing effective damage to our swordsmen. They possess formidably high attack power. We will see several versions of this unit throughout the game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Play Shining Force 3. This is Battle 7, and that is a rather large chevron of evil we have over there. Many, many birdmen. Now, this battle looks incredibly difficult. It's not at all. Now, while we give this knife that we prepared earlier to our new swordsman, goes by the name of Slate, I'm going to tell you why. Now, there's an awful lot of birdmen over there. Huge number of birdmen. Thankfully, most of those birdmen are not going to make a move until we're over the ruin over there. They're going to stick around. Now, in this video, I have cut out most of the birdmen just sitting there, because unfortunately every turn, of course, every AI character has to take a turn, and if they're just sitting there, it's like one to the other, to the other, to the other. It's incredibly boring. You don't want to see it. So if you wonder why some stuff's moved, well, that's why. Now, this is our new fellow. He goes by the name of Slate. He is a swordsman in the same way that Kite is a swordsman. However, he uses a blade instead of a sword, which has a different set of stats, as well as different special abilities, and some of his special abilities are really rather nifty. This is the only character who will appear in Scenario 3, and Scenario 2, and this scenario. So literally all 3 scenarios this fellow is involved in. He leads up the force in Scenario 3, and he appears in Scenario 2 as well. So it's interesting to see him here. He's very good at what he does. He does more damage than Kite does, although he has somewhat less defense. So he's definitely got a little bit of a different role. Now, the reason this fight is so amazingly easy is because you encounter groups in 1 to 2 at a time. Even when the birdmen start moving, they tend to move at different speeds. Some of them don't move at all, and you end up having to deal with a couple of birdmen at a time. And last battle, we saw in Battle 6, birdmen aren't even that threatening. Even less so in this battle. These guys, on the other hand, can be quite unpleasant, particularly if they engage a swordsman. They are wielding halberds. We saw troops like this in Battle 2, particularly the Saraban Bridge Guard Commander. It's the same guy, same model, just happens to be a different skin. They are quite good against swordsmen. Not particularly good against anything else. They do have quite high defense, they do quite a bit of damage. You want to keep them away from our casters, but I don't really see that as being too much of a problem. Now, my priority in this fight, aside from earning a hideous amount of experience from doing very little at all, is to go and grab what is in that ruin. And that ruin is a little bit more complex than the last one. And that's a good thing, because the last one was dull. They get more and more and more complex as we get along. This one's not hard, but there's a few more challenges that we have to overcome in order to get the items, and there is a very nice item in there. In fact, there are 2 very nice items that we have to acquire. Once we've done that, we'll be heading over to deal with the commander as well as his priest unit, and the Imperial Mage is going to be rather unpleasant. Obright's the worst character. Alright, you just have to look at him. It's funny, because Obright gets very, very good later on in the game, but for some reason, every time I play with him at the start, he does so badly. And I feel really terrible for him, to be honest. I mean, but he does so badly. Now, I am hoping that we can get Mascarin and Kite up to the soulmate status, but it's going to take a little bit of time to do that. Indeed, the soulmate system is very odd in that respect. It's not a guaranteed thing. You know, there are certain levels that you will get, you know, trusted friend, partner at, but when you're dealing with soulmate, there's a probability that increases up to a certain point, and if you still haven't reached soulmate status by that time, the probability will reset, which means that for some characters it will just never happen. it's pretty rare to get soulmate status among a lot of different characters, but it's so useful because, unlike the other friendships, it can go 2 squares. It has a 2-square range, which is incredibly good, particularly between casters and the frontline troops. I'm going to get some heals up here just to earn some extra experience, because Irene and Grace are lagging behind a little bit, so we'll give them the opportunity. We're not going to have to heal too much in this fight, so I'm not really too worried about that. Now I'm going to send Slate, and I'm going to send Dantes over there. Slate moves at a speed of 6, which is the same as Kite, but Kite cannot enter ruins. This was a question asked in the thread, and the answer, of course, is that no, we can't put our entire force in the ruins to end the problem of fighting on 2 fronts. No, we can't actually do that. What we can do is we can send Slate in there because he's not counted as the commander of this particular scenario. So Slate and Dantes are going to go in there and deal with the thieves while we move the rest of our force up and just clear the way to the end there. Now, later on, you're going to see I'm going to concentrate in this fight only upon the dungeon battle, at least until the dungeon ruin is dealt with. The rest of it is basic stuff. We're going to be shooting birdmen out of the sky without any problems whatsoever. They'll do minor damage to a couple of our guys, but it's nothing we really need to worry about, let's face it. So I'll show you the interesting stuff. This battle actually clocks in at about 25 minutes. Just because of the sheer size of it, it takes a long time to maneuver, and the end of this battle, particularly with the killing of the commander and dealing with the tougher units, well, I want to make sure that that goes nice and smoothly, so I'm going to make sure we position ourselves in the optimal kind of way. Yes, just if you have a question to ask, then yes, you do actually get that message every single time you're reminded that we should stop them ransacking the ruin, which of course we will. Although, we never really succeed. I suppose they do ransack the ruin, but instead we ransack the ruin instead, and the whole thing falls down and explodes. Whether or not that's a good thing in the eyes of King Benentrum, well, he never really tells us that. In the meantime, let's shut down some birdies. Now, see that there in the corner, LE 30%. Let me tell you a little bit about Land Effect. Land Effect is a defensive mechanism which is attached to various different pieces of terrain. If you are in something which has a land effect percent, any attacks that come in will be reduced by that amount, down to, of course, a minimum of 1 or a minimum of 3 in the case of vulnerability attacks. What it also does is it's kind of got a bit of a downside. Land effect terrain often causes certain types of units to move slower through it, particularly cavalry units. They move incredibly slowly through a lot of this land effect stuff. Mountains are the worst, but the different classes that we have in the game and the different types of unit we have different effects depending on the terrain that they're on. Cavalry have difficult with mountains, for instance, but elf units like Mascarin and Hayward have no difficulty whatsoever with forests, yet gain the 30% land effect from it. It's not something we're going to be worrying too much about at this point, because the amount of damage that's coming in is so low, but it may mean the difference between win and defeat later on, so we'll definitely keep an eye on it as we face more powerful opponents. Oh well, late to the party, but still there nonetheless. That's the first rank gained in swords for Kite, and that's going to make a big difference in his damage later on, as you will see. Okay, I said I'd concentrate on the ruins now, so that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to be showing you for the next few turns, is the battle inside the tomb or ruin, whichever you prefer to call it. Now, you'll see there are 2 monsters here. There's a sniper and there's a goblin. They prove to be little more than annoyances, but you can clearly see the design there. 2 very narrow corridors, 1 square wide, that could be quite easily blocked by either of those monsters should we move incorrectly. So we're going to have to make sure that doesn't actually happen. You've got to move to your maximum kind of speed in this battle, because by turn 3, it's over. Both of the thieves can get out by turn 3. You've seen the thief move over there and open that chest already. He's then going to head straight for the exit. So we could try and block the exit, which is something we're going to have to do in later battles, but there's really no need to. We'll be able to get there in time and nab the treasure from it. So he's heading straight for the exit there, and he's going to reach that next turn, as is that thief. So we have to get them now before they can do anything. And this is the best thing about having a spear, and this is the reason we always have a spear on Dantes, because we couldn't reach him there, but with the spear, we can. And we'll be taking that treasure off his hands for our own personal benefit. I'll tell you a little bit about this item, the Protect Ring, after the battle in the thread. Now, we don't have such a problem with Slate, who is going to be taking this item. Now, this item is a less useful item, and a lot of the ruins later on will contain items that are not quite as good. You know, they're not mind-bogglingly awesome. In this case, the Goddess Tier is actually a consumable, and again, that's something I will explain in the thread after this battle is over. Now, out they go. Once both thieves have left the ruin will collapse the exact same way that it collapses if you kill the thieves. You can block the exit, but if you block the exit before they pick up the treasure, they won't pick up the treasure. So you've got to be on the ball. You've got to do it at exactly the right time. Usually once they've grabbed the good treasure, they'll be out of their next turn, so you have to act at that point. Now, down goes the ruins, and it's about time we position ourselves to finish off this particular fight. We're dealing with an Imperial Mage, a Priest, the Battalion Commander, a couple of birds, and a partridge and a pear tree. Now, I want to do this properly, so I'm going to be maneuvering our units into such a position that they can act in unison. That's something you're going to have to see an awful lot more of later on, particularly when we're dealing with bosses that can do a lot of damage, and particularly bosses that can do AoE-style spells. They've got to be taken down as soon as possible before you end up losing troops. Now, there's no real need to watch the birdmen get beaten up by Dantes and Slate, so I want to skip forward and get to our end reckoning here. Stony Soldier engages, and now is the time when we start moving forward at pretty high speed. The Imperial Mage, you can see there, is within striking distance of our characters, so we're going to have to deal with him, like, as soon as humanly possible. What I'm going to hope for, of course, is that by putting Kite behind the Estonian Soldier, between the enemies and Mascarin, that they will go for Kite, and generally they, tend to. In the meantime, let's get Mascarin healed up so she doesn't get one-shot by any of these fellows, and that can happen. Not even a question about that. The Estonian Soldier can't, but I can guarantee that the rest of them are certainly capable of dealing HP worth of damage. Meantime, Irene is out of mana, as she frequently does get early on in the game. Unfortunately, her attack power is incredibly poor at this point in time. And the basic reason behind that is the glove weapon, which is a dual-purpose weapon that ranks up in attack and in magic. I'll talk about that in a minute. 8 HP right next to an Imperial Mage with Blaze 2, probably not the best of ideas. So let's overkill this fellow instead. Anyway, as I was saying about the glove has two classes. We explained the weapon class system earlier, and the glove has classes in magic and classes in attack, and it's kind of a middle-of-the-road weapon. It can do both, but it's so beneficial in both that we just have to stick with it, as opposed to the claws or cestus, which are the other two kinds of weapons that a monk can use. It does not benefit us too much at this point in the game, though, because the glove is inferior to other weapons in terms of attack power and doesn't really benefit magic too much. Later on, that's going to change. AoE opportunity, so let's take that opportunity. This is, of course, going to be the last AoE that we can cast with Mascarin. Our mana is getting relatively low. Funnily enough, the Goddess Tier that we picked up earlier is the first consumable that can regenerate mana, but it doesn't become common until way later in the game, and it's not something you really want to use unless it's absolutely necessary. Thankfully, the Imperial Mage decided he wasn't going to be too smart here, and while Blaze 2 is going to hurt Mascarin an awful lot, I'm sure he could have done a lot more damage had he decided to go for that. The tendency for enemies to go for the weaker characters, if they're available, can actually be used to your advantage. Now, you wonder why I'm moving Dantes around there instead of sending him around there. Well, look at the terrain. That terrain is going to be a bit of a problem for knights. Indeed, it's actually faster for Dantes to go around that way than it is to go through that huge, stonking great forest there. In this case, we're not worried either way, because I intend to kill these guys before Dantes can even get there. And I can pretty much guarantee you that that's going to happen. Now, you're wondering why I'm clumping up so much. Well, that mage is going to be dying before he can cast another spell, I can guarantee you that. You know what? It's nice to live on the edge sometimes. Let me guess, all of my characters are now going to evidently miss the mage. That's what's going to happen. No, I don't think that's so likely. About time we got Irene some reasonable experience. A fairy powder learned there, and a rank up in gloves, which is going to improve her magic as well as her attack power. One fellow left, and I intend to knock him out before he even gets the opportunity to hurt us in any way. It's a little bit risky. Can we do it? Well, we're about to find out. Is Oberyn actually going to do any damage here? Shall we see? Yes, he is. And he hasn't missed. He's still pretty terrible. Once he gains a rank in that weapon, he'll be a little bit better, but I just wish he scaled up earlier. I think we've got time for maybe one more blaze, and then we'll just finish him off before he even gets the chance to act. Kind of pointless, I know, but I just feel like I'm moving him in there anyway. Right, time to finish this. Kite actually has reasonable attack power now thanks to his rank up and is quite capable of dispatching the battalion commander. And that was Battle 7 of Let's Play Shining Force 3. It's Scenario 1. My name is Total Biscuit. I will see you when we fight again, which will be very, very soon. I can guarantee you that. Thanks for watching, guys.